Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another video on the Quran study channel. Today we're going to study something slightly different from the sort of things that we've been studying before. So stay tuned. Okay, so what we've often studied on our channel when it comes to the Quran are passages in the Quran which directly discuss instructions and guidance for us, and we've also done a lot of study to help us to understand some of the misconceptions about the Quran and misconceptions about the instructions contained in the Quran for us, a lot of the misunderstandings about Islam amongst Muslims and non-Muslims. But today we're going to study about Qarun in the Quran. Now, do you know who Qarun was? Have you heard of Qarun? If you have heard of Qarun, let me know in the comment section. Let me know what you know about Qarun, what you've heard about Qarun, whether you've even heard of Qarun. Qarun is something which is mentioned in the Quran. Qarun is in the Quran. So let me explain what we're going to do. You see, in the Quran, what you find is that a number of verses, passages, they refer to historical characters. They refer to people that existed in the past. And those passages, they describe incidents that occurred or the way individuals lived their lives and provide the history. Now, one thing that's really important to understand is that when God describes historical happenings of the past, whether it's to do with specific individuals that are mentioned or other events, they're not just mentioned just for the purpose of mentioning them. They are always there to provide a lesson for us and to provide some guidance to us. Allah is using these historical examples, referring to them, so that we can learn from them, so we can learn and truly understand what God is explaining to us in the rest of the book. Okay, now we haven't done this very often, but I want to show you how you do that today. And we're going to use the example of Qarun to see how you do that. Now, there are 9 verses that we're going to be going through. Okay, so now, those of you who follow this channel regularly will know that I often use the analogy of the Quran being like an ocean. And by that, what I mean is that if you take a verse, you could either skim over it, which basically means you're not really in the ocean, you're just looking at it, or you could go deep. And the more time you spend on a specific verse, on a particular verse, the deeper you'll go into it. It's like you are swimming deeper and deeper. And if you go deep, you find more valuable gems and pearls. The deeper you go, the more valuable the gems you find. And that's the same in the Quran. When you're studying the Quran, it's like swimming in an ocean. Now, because we have 9 verses to go through today, we're going to be swimming near the top level today. We're not going to go too deep, otherwise this will become a very, very detailed and long session, which I want to avoid for today. But what you will find is that even when we're just swimming near the top, as long as we're swimming and we're exploring, we're going to find some really interesting, valuable lessons that we can apply in our daily lives. We must apply in our daily lives, in fact. Okay? So, without further ado, let's study about Qarun in the Quran. So Qarun is mentioned in a few places in the Quran, but the verses that we're going to go through are those which are contained in Surah Al-Qasas, which is chapter 28, and we're going to be looking at verses 76 to 84. Now, what I've done is I've tried to avoid the interpretations of translators and therefore tried to note here the word for word translations. Okay? I've removed all the interpretations which sometimes you find in brackets and so forth. So, let's start with chapter 28, verse 76. So now, one of the questions I asked you was, do you know who Qarun was? And I asked you to let me know in the comment section. Well, here, Allah tells us who he was. Here we go. Allah's telling us, if you look at number 76, indeed, Qarun was from the people of Moses. There we go. So Allah is introducing Qarun to us. He's saying that he was living at the time of Prophet Moses. And he was from the people of Moses. And from that, what we can take is that he was of the people who was following Prophet Moses. He was one of the people who listened to and followed the commands that were being passed down from God through Prophet Moses. Okay? But he rebelled and carried out injustices against them. So here, very quickly, Allah has told us that this person called Qarun, he rebelled. So he stopped following the commandments of God, which were being passed down through the Prophet. He rebelled and he carried out injustices against them. Against who? Against the people of Moses. Now, whereas the revelations from God are all about justice, the focus on justice, he rebelled and began carrying out injustices. Okay? Then Allah tells us, and we gave him of the treasures, which indeed the keys of it would burden a company possessors of great strength. So what Allah is telling us here, that Qarun was blessed with lots of wealth, treasures, lots of blessings. And there was so much treasure, so much wealth that was bestowed upon Qarun that even if that much wealth was given to people of great strength, it would burden them in terms of the responsibility that comes with being in possession of such wealth and such treasure. Okay, so that's how much. So that's how much treasure, how much wealth he was given. Okay, but with it came a burden. Okay, and the people that relied on him, his people said, not exalt. Indeed, Allah had not loved the exultant. So what was happening here, Allah's telling us, is that Qarun was exultant. He was showing off his wealth, the treasures that had been bestowed upon him by God. And people were warning him. They were saying, no, do not exalt. Allah does not love the exultant. So you're beginning to get a feel for the type of person that Qarun was, yes? You see how in one verse Allah has introduced this person to us. Okay, so let's continue. Next one, 28:77. Allah says, and these people were saying, but seek through what Allah has given you, the home of the hereafter, and not forget your share of the world. So his people were telling him, they were saying to him that you should be using those blessings to obtain the rewards which are promised in the hereafter. In other words, use those blessings in the way that God has ordained on you, commanded you. Don't show off. Don't carry out injustices using your wealth. Okay, but they also said, and not forget your share of the world. So here, what they were saying to him was, of course you should enjoy the share of this world. You see, when you understand the Qur'an and you understand God's instructions, he doesn't say that we should be constrained in this world and live in a bad way or constrain the delights that we can get in this world. No, there is a share of this world that we have. What we have to understand is what is that share and in what way has God told us that we should obtain that share. But this person, Qarun, was clearly doing something very wrong. And one of those things was showing off his wealth. And here, they're telling him about some of the things that have been ordered by God, instructed by God, and do good as Allah has been good to you. So they were telling him, just like Allah has been good to you, reflect on that and be good to others. Do you remember we had this study session where we discussed how ibadah means to serve God by serving others? That concept is coming through here. Okay, let's move on because there's a few other verses we need to get through. So let's keep going. And not seek fasad in the earth. We've studied what fasad means. Do you remember? on one of our Quran study sessions. In summary, fasad is to cause corruption on this earth by bringing about or supporting imbalances, inequality, injustices in this world. Indeed, Allah not love those who do fasad. Okay, move on. 2878. He said, and now this is Qarun saying something, only I have been given it on knowledge I have. So, you can see the arrogance coming through now. You can see the ego speaking. He's saying, well, I've only been given this wealth because of what I have. It is because of me that I have all this wealth. I earned this wealth. This is my wealth. And it is for me to do with it what I want to do with it. Only I've been given it on knowledge I have. I have the knowledge. I used it. I became wealthy. It is because of me that I'm wealthy. So the arrogance, the lack of understanding that these blessings have been bestowed upon him by his creator. He's ignoring that. He's choosing to ignore it. And then Allah says here, did not he know that Allah indeed destroyed before him of the generations who stronger than him, strength and greater accumulation, and not questioned about the sins of the criminals? A couple of things here. Allah is reminding Qarun, reminding us that did Qarun not reflect on the fact that before him there were people even more powerful and wealthy than him, people who accumulated even more wealth and treasures than Qarun did, that they were destroyed. They were ultimately destroyed. And Allah did not question them about the sins because it was obvious. They were criminals. And you see now, here Allah is also giving us an idea of what injustice Qarun was carrying out. He was accumulating. Because here Allah is saying there are other people that accumulated even more than he did. So here we now know that one of the things that Qarun was doing in his rebellion was accumulating the blessings, the wealth that had been bestowed upon him. And Allah is saying that these people are sinning and they are criminals. Okay, let's move on. So he went forth to his people in his adornment. Here, can you see now he's showing off his wealth. He was adorning himself with the wealth that had been bestowed upon him. Said those who desire the life of the world. So there are people who, like him, desire the life of this world, maximizing the pleasures of this world rather than thinking about the day of judgment and the rewards and punishment of the hereafter. Those people said, oh, would that for us like what has been given Qarun? Indeed, he owned a fortune great. So people were looking at him and saying, we wish we were like him. We wish we had that much wealth. He has such great fortune. So here is Qarun showing off his wealth. And here are other people who are feeling envious of it and wishing, desiring a life like him. Now, doesn't that strike a chord in terms of today's society? When you look at the celebrities, when you look at what's on social media and the way people like to project themselves. But anyway, we're going to come on to the lessons. But you can see suddenly the connection between this story of Qarun, which took place centuries ago, to what still happens in today's world. Okay, so therefore there must be lessons for us here. Let's keep going. But said those who were given the knowledge, so those who understood the truth, woe to you, reward Allah better for who believes and does righteous deeds, and not it is granted except the sabirin. So there was some people who were envious of him and desired the same sort of fortune because of Qarun's showing off of his wealth. But then there are others who understood the knowledge from God at the time of Prophet Moses, who were saying, woe to you. Allah rewards better those who believe and those who do righteous deeds. Okay, so righteous deeds. So again, there's a clue about what he wasn't doing or wasn't doing enough of. Righteous deeds. Those are the people who obtain the rewards from Allah. And it is not granted to anybody except the sabirin. Now, we've done a study session specifically to understand how the Qur'an defines the word sabr. And those people who do sabr are known as sabirin. So you can go over to my YouTube channel and have a look at that study session we did where we defined sabr according to the words of God in the Qur'an. Right. So what happened next? Then we caused to swallow up him and his home, the earth. So the earth swallowed him up. Now, this is not necessarily a literal description of what happened. The earth didn't necessarily just open up and swallow him. Figuratively speaking, Allah is saying that he got swallowed up by the earth. He was destroyed. He was finished. And when Allah says him and his home, it means that everything that he owned, everything that he considered his home, everything that he thought was protecting him, it swallowed him up and he was destroyed. So in the course of his actions, he was finished. There not was for him any group help him besides Allah, and not was of those who helped themselves. So two things here. Number one, nobody could help him. Only Allah is reminding us that only Allah could have helped him, nobody else. He was destroyed. And he was not somebody who could help himself. He was helpless. Against the might of Allah, he was helpless. Now, before we continue, just a quick thing. If you are finding this video useful and interesting, please do click on like on the YouTube channel, because that really helps us in the sense that YouTube will potentially push this video in front of other people, and that helps to spread this knowledge, which is what we're trying to do. So please hit like and click on the subscribe button as well, because as you know, we put on new study videos once or twice a week if we can. So it'd be great for you to subscribe and follow this channel as well. Okay, let's continue. Right, so the story is getting towards the end now. And began those who wished his position the day before. So remember, there were people who were envious of this person's position, of Qarun's position. Now they're saying, that Allah extends the provision for whom he wills of his servants and restricts it. If not that Allah had favoured us, he would have caused it to swallow us. So now they are realizing something. The people who were envious of Qarun, they saw his destruction and they realized that Allah decides who obtains how much of his blessings. And they realized that if they had been given what Qarun was given and they had acted in the same way, then Allah would have caused the earth to swallow them up as well. They also would have been destroyed. Suddenly they've seen what happened to Qarun and realized. And then they say, that not will succeed the kafirun. So here they are realizing and they're helping to define the word kafir. So the actions which Qarun was undertaking was that of a kafir. Now, when this study session is over, just have a think about again the sort of things that Qarun was doing. And here Allah is using the word kafirun. So when you think of the word kafir and you question what is the definition of the word kafir, included within the definition are the actions which Qarun was taking, which we've been discussing in this study session. But let's move on. We're going to come back to the key lessons in a second. Okay, 83. This is the penultimate verse we're going to go through. That the home, the hereafter, we assign it to those who do not desire exaltedness in the earth and not fasad. So Allah is saying that the hereafter, the rewards in the hereafter, are for those who do not desire exaltedness, people who want to show off and adorn the blessings which have been bestowed upon them by God. And those who do not desire fasad. Now fasad, again, I mentioned, we've studied before, the definition of that being those who cause corruption on the earth, those who cause disharmony, inequality, injustice, and Allah is including exaltedness in that as well, in that definition. So exaltedness, if you're showing off your wealth rather than doing righteous deeds, is fasad. And the good end for the muttaqeen, So Allah is saying that in the end, the good outcome is for the muttaqeen. Now, we have also defined muttaqeen in several of our Quran study sessions before. Here, what Allah is telling us, that what Qarun was doing, the fasad he was causing, is the opposite of muttaqeen. So the definition of muttaqeen can be understood by understanding the opposite of fasad and the opposite of the actions and the way of life that was taken on by Qarun. And then the last one. Whoever comes with a good, then for him, better than it. So when you do good, you actually get better reward than the good you've done. So the reward is a multiple of the amount of good that you do. And whoever comes with an evil, think Qarun here, whoever comes with an evil, then not will be recompensed those who do the evil except what they used to do. So basically God is telling us here is that he's saying if you think about the history of Qarun, the lesson is that if you do evil, which is what he was doing, so again Allah is describing what evil is. If you do what Qarun did, which is evil, then your outcome, the recompense for that, the outcome, is the same as the evil you did. So he destroyed other people because he accumulated his wealth, and in the end, he was destroyed. Now, this is the bit which I love to do. So stay with me for a few more minutes, okay? Let's work out what the key lessons are contained in these verses for us. Because remember, two things. Number one, the Qur'an is applicable to all people for all times. So this is not just a matter of history for the sake of history. What Allah wants us to do is to take these historical events, the experiences of specific historical characters, and think about what it means for us and apply them in our lives. Because what we don't want happening to us is the outcome which Qarun got. So, I like to do do's and don'ts. Okay, so let's have a look at the don'ts. What do these verses tell us about the don'ts? Now, you can forget about the fact that it was Qarun. Okay, what do these verses tell us? Don't. Allah's telling us don't rebel. Don't rebel against the instructions that have been given to us by God. Allah's telling us don't act unjustly. Don't be unjust, which is what this character was doing. Allah's telling us with these verses, do not misuse the blessings bestowed upon us by God. He's telling us do not exult in the blessings. Don't show them off. Don't think that they have been given to you because of you yourself only. You have to recognize that they've been given to us by God. And don't show them off. Use them in a just way. Don't cause fasad. Don't cause imbalance, corruption, and disharmony in society. Through what? Through accumulating the treasures bestowed upon us. This is what Qarun did. He accumulated the treasures that were bestowed upon him. Because what God tells us through these verses is that if we accumulate treasures, then such people will be destroyed. They will be destroyed. Allah tells us that these people that accumulate treasure, they are criminals. They are of the kafirun. Allah is telling us that nobody will be able to help them, nor can they help themselves. Allah tells us that those who desire the life of this world, who seek simply the pleasures of this world at the expense of others, they will feel jealous of these people who are showing off their wealth, their blessings, their treasures. They'll say, we wish we were like them. But when that person is destroyed, these same people realize the truth. So Allah's telling us here not to be like those people who are envious, who are admiring the people that we see in society who are accumulating wealth at the expense of others, which is injustice, which is fasad. We see the people, all of us see them. We see the people who are accumulating wealth, and at the same time there are people in this world who are children who are dying of thirst and hunger and disease. We see the inequality that this is caused by the accumulation of wealth by certain people, by a small number of people on this earth. And we see around us people who admire them, who want to be equally wealthy, who spend their lives to become equally wealthy so they can enjoy the pleasures, maximize the pleasures of this world and live like those people. We see that. All of us do. The lessons which God is teaching us through the experience of this person called Qarun, this historical figure, is a reminder for us not to be like that person. And what is God telling us that we should do? God is telling us that we should understand that all blessings are from God. Therefore, because they are from God, they are to be used in God's way, in the way that God has guided us. And one of those things is not to accumulate the blessings, hoarding the blessings. What we have to do is use God's blessings, seek the rewards of the hereafter, and our share of the life of this world. So we have to understand, what is our share? There's a balance to be struck here. We're not to be fully constrained and give everything away. There's a share for us in this world. But also the hereafter, we have to understand what that share is, which, by the way, you can understand through the Qur'an. We have to do good upon others as God does good upon us. So here we have to recognize the blessings, the good that God has done for us. And what Allah is saying through this lesson of Qarun is that we must then do good to others, righteous deeds. And Allah says you get better rewards for righteous deeds. And you see these rewards if you do sabr. Now, like I said, we did a study session on the word sabr and what it means. And it means, in summary, to persevere, to patiently persevere actively, and eventually you will get the rewards. And Allah is saying such people, these people who are doing righteous deeds, who are recognizing the blessings from God, they are the muttaqeen. Okay, does that make sense? Can you see how this lesson, this historical lesson, is for us now? It's for us to apply in our lives now. It is equally applicable now as it was then. Now, the reason why I wanted to go through these types of verses today, which we haven't done before, was, like I said, number one, to demonstrate how we have to use the lessons in the Qur'an when Allah is referring to a historical event or historical characters like Qarun. But the other thing I wanted to demonstrate is that only through these 9 verses, the breadth of concepts that God has touched upon is magnificent. Just have a think about the number of different concepts that have been touched upon today as we end this study session. Let's look at this. In these verses, Allah touched on the concept of justice versus injustice. He touched on the concept of understanding, blessings from God, the concept of their misuse through our behavior, the concept of punishment for the misuse of God's blessings. We touched on societal psychology, including jealousy, envy. We touched on wealth and its accumulation, touched on criminals, and we also touched on some very significant, important terminologies which are used in the Qur'an, which include fasad, kafir, sabr, and muttaqeen. These terms are used repeatedly in the Qur'an, and we are often thinking about what these terms mean. And Allah helps to describe the meaning of these words through the verses that we were studying. I hope I've enabled you to understand and see how just taking a group of verses that contain some lessons for us based on historical events or historical characters, the number of concepts you begin to pick up. And that, my brothers and sisters, is an example of the richness contained in the Qur'an. So now imagine if you wanted to go through the Qur'an and pick up knowledge about societal psychology. Well, these group of verses contained one element of that. We looked at that today. Imagine if you wanted to pick up the Qur'an and obtain knowledge about injustice as God sees it. Well, we touched on that through this lesson. So all these concepts, imagine if we go through the rest of the Qur'an, the depth, not just the breadth, but the depth of knowledge that we pick up. And imagine the wisdom that gives you. Imagine what kind of character that forms within you. Imagine the type of person that makes you. And this is why we must all pay attention to the Qur'an and obtain the timeless value that it contains for all mankind. If you like this video, please do click on like. Please share your comments with me. Let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know whether you knew about Qarun and whether you had already understood these concepts and these lessons from the character Qarun before. Let me know what you think, whether there were other lessons that you saw from the verses we looked at today, whether there were other concepts that were covered that I haven't picked up, because that will certainly be interesting for me. So, hope you found that useful. Please do look after yourself. Please do recognize the blessings from God and don't accumulate them just for yourselves. Please do righteous deeds. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن